Now, those of you who watch this program know that I believe that election integrity is one of the most critical issues facing our country today. My next guest believes the same. He's a former Georgia congressman, currently at the Family Research Council, and is the author of a new book called Sacred Trust: Election Integrity and the Will of the People. Please welcome Jody Hice. Great to have you here.
Yes.
You went to Congress, were there for several years. Looking at what's going on this week, do you miss it at all?
Oh, mercy. You know, there's parts of it, yes, you miss the colleagues, you miss the battles, but boy, it's upside down right now. And there's a lot of it I don't miss, for sure.
Many of us watch it, and I consider myself maybe a little better informed than some people, but maybe not as much as others. But just looking at it from the outside, it sometimes is frustrating that the infighting, especially within the Republican Party, they take all their dirty laundry, and it's almost like they don't just put it out for the world to see. They make sure that it's front and center so that nobody misses it. It's not just that you can see it, you can't not see it. What the heck do they think that accomplishes? I'm at a loss to understand that.
Yeah, it's a strange phenomenon, and you add to it, the media throws gas on it, try to make it even bigger than it is. There are always meetings that are private where information is leaked, and then that just starts adding fuel to the fire as well. But you know, when you only have a majority of one or two people, I mean, we're already in a position we have to have precision in working through this. But with the toxicity that exists right now, it's extremely difficult.
Well, and I understand there are strong differences of opinion. I get that. And I understand that there are things that we as Republicans, we really want and we want to believe in, but we have to get to the votes or those things don't happen. And even if we get to them in the House and pass them, they're going to die in the Senate unless it has an overwhelming support. And if it doesn't have all of that, President Biden's never going to sign it into law. So at best, we can play some defense, keep some bad things from happening at the House level. But it seems like some people believe that we ought to just be changing America by having 1/2 of 1/3 of the government. And I'm scratching my head wondering, how do they miss the simple math that just won't quite work?
Well, I think at the bottom line, Mike, what these people are facing is the reality that we are watching the demise of our country right under our nose. From the southern border to the out-of-control spending to what's happening on the global scene, all of this. And if we don't make changes quickly, it's going to slip right out of our fingers.
And that I do understand, especially when it comes to the border and the fact that we've seen 10 million people pour across. And that gets to the heart of your book, Sacred Trust: Election Integrity. Some have surmised that the reason that the Biden administration and Democrats really don't mind seeing that many people come across the border, which we have no idea who they are, because it does affect how the allocations for congressional districts are done. And if the Democrats are ever able to just allow people to vote, no matter what their citizenship, then the country is forever changed and we'll never get it back.
That's right. We are at the very base, at the foundation. We are a governed based upon the consent of the governed, not the consent of the governing. And at the epicenter of that reality is the integrity of the ballot box. It's the voice of the people. And I tell people all the time, what elections are all about really is not about who wins or who loses. What elections are all about is whether or not the will of the people was heard and accurately represented. That is because if I may be disappointed my candidate loses, but if it's a fair election, we can come back. But as you're saying, if there is some compromise in the election integrity, then we have serious problems. It's extremely difficult to retain.
Jody, what's the difference between a stolen election and an election that has irregularities that could, in fact, affect the outcome?
Well, these days, there's a world of difference. You know, unfortunately, these days, even for those who have legitimate questions, we are put into a camp as election deniers, as threats to democracy, all these type of things. You believe in stolen election. I mean, right now, it's all wrapped up together to where those of us who legitimately have concerns with abnormalities and inconsistencies, or just you smell something that doesn't look right, then we are lumped into this category of dangerous people for our society. But that goes back to what elections are all about, is integrity. And to have that, you must have transparency. But obviously, a stolen election is where it is just that. The election was stolen. But you know, where there are legitimate problems, legitimate concerns, be it with inaccurate voter registration files or mail-in ballots or ballot harvesting or lack of voter photo identification, whatever it may be, then those are issues of legitimate concern that could potentially change the outcome of an election, and they need to be addressed.
The resistance, which I do not understand, the resistance to photo ID, to prove who you are when you go vote. What's up with that? Because why would somebody say, oh, we can't ask people to show who they are? I mean, I don't get that.
Yeah, I don't get that either. You know, you have to, when you're connecting the dots, you have to conclude there's some sort of nefarious reason for not having obvious things that protect election. And that goes back, I went to Congress, Governor, and this was not on my radar. Election integrity, not one of the things that I went there for, but I ended up being a senior member on the Oversight Committee.
Yeah.
And while there, we had our first case of COVID in Washington State. The very next week, after the first case, the very next week in Oversight, Democrats started holding hearings about we needing to federalize elections and change our election laws, that people are going to be fearful of going to the ballot box or they may be locked. And it was one hearing after another, while the rest of us were wondering, what is this even going to mean to me or my family?
Yeah.
What is coming? It was as though they were strategically moving forward, focused on the upcoming election. And that started raising a red flag with me. And then, unfortunately, many of the things that they were trying to federalize were unilaterally accepted in various states, be it from governors or secretaries of state or whether, apart from legislatures by and large.
Yeah.
And here we have it. Photo ID gone, all these things tossed out the window.
And it was very frustrating to see that some states violated their own constitution and their own laws, and they got away with it. The bigger problem was not that they said, okay, we're going to have to suspend our constitution about when the ballots have to be counted or when they have to be in. And Pennsylvania, for example, allowed them several days past the date to still come in. That was bad enough. But that no one challenged it or allowed it to be challenged, and the courts would say, either you don't have standing or there's no evidence of election fraud. The reason there was no evidence is because nobody would let them look at it.
You couldn't look. How do you find evidence if you're not able to look? There must be transparency in all of this. If not, people lose confidence. And when people lose confidence that their elections matter, that their vote is counted accurately, then they just stay at home. And that turns our entire country upside down from the perspective of this being run and led by and for the people.
So when you did the book, Sacred Trust, election integrity is the theme of it. Are there some things we can do as a country, and is that the prescription that you have in the book, so that here's how to fix this?
Yeah, I mean, there are the obvious. I mean, now keep in mind that the time, place, and manner, according to the Constitution, time, place, and manner of elections are left to the states. It's not a federal issue.
Yeah.
So we have 50 states with 50 different rules and regulations of how they process their elections. So it's difficult to say every state, but universally, there are some things that should be accepted, such as voter identification, such as cleaning up our voter registration files. I saw an article, I believe last week, that said that the average state is between 8 and 18% inaccurate on their files. So, you know, we're round that off. If we're 10 to 20% off before we even start, then we're behind the 8 ball. But then you add to that your mail-in ballots and your ballot harvesting, having eyes on the ground, boots on the ground, poll workers in place. All these type of things are universally type of issues and matters that should be in place in every state. And yes, I address a lot of those in the book.
This is the book. It's called Sacred Trust, Election Integrity and the Will of the People. And if you care at all about the state of affairs of our election process, and you must care, this is a must read. If you visit Huckabee.tv, we'll give you links where you can purchase the book and keep up with all that Congressman Jody Hice has going on at the Family Research Council. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I hope you will now. The button is just below this video, and there's a little bell next to it. If you click on those, YouTube will reluctantly start letting you know when we've got a new video uploaded.